if you're waiting until you have it all figured out, you'll be waiting forever. And to be honest, that might be the best news you hear today. In this episode, I'm going to be speaking about why following your interests is more powerful than having the perfect plan, how doing this has helped me be calmer and live in the moment, the myth of figuring life out, and much more. Jumping into the episode, let's start by looking at this pressure to have a plan. So this comes from external places. This comes from advertising, social media, and the likes of that. So these come in the form of social milestones. So getting a job, getting a house, relationships, kids, and all of these things that come along on the ride. Now, I've spoken about comparison in a previous episode about how social media can enhance that and how I've been guilty myself of looking at what other people have, looking at where they are in their lives and sort of comparing myself to them. It's really easily done. It's really easy to fall into that trap of seeing what other people are showing you online, and it's not always the reality. And in fact, normally it's not reality. So when I look back at my own life, I sort of had this idea in my mind that by age 28, I was going to buy my first property and sort of buy my own flat, whatever. Well, this February, I turned 30 and I still don't have a property. So life happens and you've got to be able to adapt. Anyone in the UK will know that the housing market has just gone completely berserk, and sort of the last 5 years or so, the rises in mortgage rates and the payments that would then lead you to paying has just skyrocketed. And I had to accept that and accept that maybe this little number, which I just pulled out of thin air, it wasn't anything with any context, any reason to be that number. I just sort of thought, I'm a few years away and then I'll get it then. I had to adapt my goals and just accept that life changes things for you. You can have your goals, but sometimes life just happens. Like someone once put it, we make plans and then life reminds us it's not that linear. When I think back through my own life, I see that I've managed to sort of follow my interests pretty well up until this point. And it's not something that necessarily I was trying to do, but in hindsight, it's sort of everything that I've been doing over the last 10 years or so. So if I look back at my time in school, it's a time where you sort of get directed towards what you're good at. So for me, that was maths at the time and to a lesser extent, physics. So I was sort of guided towards going for sort of aerospace engineering. And when it came to university, selecting that, it seemed like the right thing to do. I didn't know any different. And so I put in that as my application. Now, looking at universities, the only two universities that really appealed to me were Loughborough and Surrey University, and that was purely for the sports element, the sports grounds that they had. Like, I enjoyed playing sports, I enjoyed being active, and I wanted to be able to do that wherever I went next. And in hindsight, that probably showed I was going to university for the wrong reasons. So come results day, I didn't get into either of those universities and I wasn't that bothered. Again, when I look back now, I realized that I was going to university for the wrong reasons, for the lifestyle, for the sports, and it's a lot of money to pay just for that. So this is where I really started to follow my interests. So starting from then, I looked at what I enjoyed doing at that time, and that was exercise and going to the gym. So naturally for me, I thought, why don't I try and qualify as a personal trainer? Let's do the qualification. And I started working in a gym as well. So I worked there for a year and a half. I started to lead classes, sort of bring people through their fitness journey. And I really enjoyed helping people. That was the thing that stood out to me. So I really enjoyed helping people who were at the start of their fitness journey, or maybe they'd sort of got stagnant and they weren't really sure where to go next, or maybe they were experts and they just needed to tweak little bits and sort of hone in at the end. So that was something that I really enjoyed, was helping people achieve their goals. And that's when the fire brigades opened up applications the following year. So it was something that I saw and immediately sort of grabbed me. And I thought, that's a way to help people, right? As cliche as it sounds. And so I applied. I didn't really know tons about it. I sort of had this thought of, I think I'd like to do that. I'd like to help people in any way I can. And obviously, in that job, you are helping people on what could be the worst day of their lives. So I applied for it. And in September 2017, I started training as a firefighter. Throughout my time in the fire brigades, I've continued to follow my interests. So I worked part-time as a personal trainer on the side of the job, again, going back to the gym environment to keep helping people. And more recently, I started this podcast, and I actually stopped personal training specifically for that, to allow myself to have the time to dedicate to this. Because in my mind, this is a way to help people as well. I help people in my main job on the worst day of their life. Hopefully through this podcast, I can help other people before it gets to that point. And I'm interested to learn. Hopefully you as the listener interested to learn. So if I can bring people along on that journey with me, then awesome. We'll learn together. So I appreciate this is all work related stuff. And so looking outside of that element of it and looking at maybe my fitness journey. So at the start, it was very much, as every young boy is go to the gym, get massive so I can look good. But it soon dawned on me how poor my cardio was when I started playing football again. And so I started bringing more of that in. That interested me, that more long endurance style. And ultimately that led me on to running marathons, multiple triathlons. More recently, I've tried Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. That's something that just interested me and I wanted to try. And yeah, I've been doing that for a little bit of time as well. I left tennis, so I was playing tennis. And this is where the sort of toss-up of what interests you at that time comes into it. So when I started Jiu-Jitsu, I was very aware that and tennis and the running and the triathlons was a lot to take on. So I made the decision to stop tennis at that time because at the time I wasn't enjoying it as much and jiu-jitsu grabbed me and yeah, I had to sort of sacrifice one for the other. And this is a theme of interests, I suppose, is it's not forever. It's temporary, it can shift, but it's following what interests you in that moment. So I've been using the word interest specifically rather than passion. A lot of people will say, what's your passion? And I think the reason is, to me at least, passion is a deeper, it's an intense thing. It's something that is formed over time. When I look at what an interest is, again, like I said a moment ago, that can be something a bit more shifting. It can change, it could be temporary. It's that little pull, like, I wonder what would happen if I just did that thing. It's in the back of your mind and you can't really shake it. And it comes from curiosity. I think that actually passions are found through following your interests. So if you follow an interest and after a time, you become passionate about it. I think a lot of the time we sort of sit around and we say, what is your passion? And if you don't know your passion, you look around for it and you try and find it and you try and find this big passion. What is it that gets me going about life? And a lot of the time, by just sitting and waiting and not following those little interests as they crop up, you're putting yourself on the back burner. You're not making progress towards finding what your passion is because you're not following what is interesting you in that moment. And it can be difficult because you don't know where it's going to lead to. You don't know what's next, what's the big plan, what's the big picture at the end. And it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. And I think it's a great reminder that you don't have to have it all planned out. With anything in life, we like to sort of have a very structured approach to things. We like to know exactly where we're going. But sometimes the most exciting stuff is when you don't really know, you just know the next step and you take step after step after step. And before you know it, it snowballs into something bigger. The way I like to look at it is like you're going into a maze. So you don't know which pathway is going to lead you to the middle of the maze, And as you go along each pathway, you're going to see different branches, different options, different pathways open up either side of you. And you might try one. And worst case, if you get to a dead end, you can turn around, come back to the point you were on, carry on. But if you didn't try that one, you would never know. So that's how I like to look at it. In my personal opinion, is I'm just trying little routes out. If they don't work, they don't work. So what? I'll come back to the last known point and go again. I think the idea that people should be following a rough sort of timeline in life is outdated. We've moved beyond that. And I think a lot of it, for all the negativity I throw at it, is sort of the options that social media and the internet give us, allowing people to share their messages worldwide, internationally, with very little friction. And I think ultimately for you as the listener and for me, it comes down to living in alignment with our values versus the certainty of where we're going. We think of these things that we need to have or we have to achieve to be successful. Who defines that? But really, what we should be doing is living in our alignment or in alignment with our values. So obviously the first step is finding your own values. And if you don't know what your values are, then that's a separate topic, and definitely a starting point. But if you know your values, then look at how you live your life. Do those align to where you're going? I was speaking to someone the other day who had just finished university and he'd done a degree in something science-based, I believe. And I said, okay, so what are you doing next? And he said, oh, I'll just get lost in the corporate world, I suppose. And it was that sort of resignation to the rest of his life being a 9-to-5 grind, essentially. I was speechless, really. I didn't know what to say beyond that. And I think that's where a lot of people go. I think people go to university with not really knowing their intentions. They do degrees that they don't really feel that passionate or interested in. And they end up just going into this corporate world and just getting lost in that office environment, 9-to-5, for the rest of their life. Speaking to my previous guest, Sveti Rue, she's a solo traveler living the nomadic lifestyle for the last 2 to 3 years. And she's traveled across the world, lived in multiple countries over that time. And I asked her at the end whether she'd settled down in a place in the future, or whether she had any sort of goals to. And she said, I just want to live in alignment. And it was a really cool answer because it didn't commit to one or the other. I think often we look at, there must be an option, like, is she going to keep traveling forever? Is she going to stay in one place? But to say, I just want to live in alignment with my values is exactly what we're talking about. It's following what interests you in that moment. One day it might stop interesting you, and that's okay. But for now, we follow it and we see where it goes. If you're listening to this and feeling like you don't know what to align yourself with or what's next for you, don't overthink it. Just try to find your next path. What piques your interest in this very moment? Go and give it a go and see what happens. Not knowing the ending is a key part of the journey. So maybe when we look at it, the question isn't, what should I be doing with my life? Instead, maybe it's, what's quietly pulling my attention? And what would happen if I followed it? Let go of the pressure to prove that you're on track with the expected timeline of life. Thanks for listening to this solo chapter. Hopefully it gave you some space to breathe, to not feel the pressure of following the perfect plan, and instead to follow your own curiosity and just pull at that thread and see where it leads. If this resonated with you, then feel free to share it with someone who you think might need it too. Or you can tag me on Instagram at Lonely Chapter Podcast to keep the conversation going. And as always, stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.